When we look back at history, we think of these huge battles, these game-changing inventions, and these grand, epic legacies. But sometimes the final chapter of a really remarkable life isn't some big bang. It's just a bizarre and profoundly unlucky accident. I mean, come on, we've all been there. You spill coffee all over yourself right before a big meeting, you miss the bus, you lock your keys in the car. It feels like the end of the world, right? Well, whatever you're thinking of, I guarantee you it doesn't even come close to what we're about to talk about.
Today we're going to dive into the stories of four people from history whose lives ended in ways that are so ironic, so unfortunate, you'll have a hard time believing they're actually true. These aren't just bad days. These are, without a doubt, some of history's absolute most unlucky endings.
Okay, so let's kick things off in 16th century India. We're talking about the second emperor of the mighty Mughal Empire, a guy named Humayun. This man spent pretty much his entire life fighting tooth and nail to build and then reclaim a kingdom. Seriously, Humayun was a big deal. He commanded massive armies. He navigated all this treacherous political drama. His entire life was basically one high-stakes action movie. But for all the actual battles he managed to survive, his final enemy was, well, it was anything but grand. So picture this. You're just 22 years old, and you inherit this massive empire. Sounds great, right? Wrong. His own brothers started working against him, and eventually a rival kicks him out. He's forced into exile for 15 long years. But against all odds, he gets some allies, marches back, and takes back his throne. What a comeback story. His victory lap, though, was, let's just say, incredibly short. After surviving all those wars and that long exile, his end finally came in 1556. He was leaving his library, arms totally full of books, when he heard the call to prayer. Now, out of pure habit, he tried to kneel, but his foot got tangled up in his own robe. He tumbled down a flight of stone stairs, hit his head, and that was it. 3 days later, the emperor was dead.
All right, our next story keeps us in the 16th century. But we're hopping over to Denmark to meet one of the greatest astronomers in history, the brilliant Tycho Brahe. Tycho was an absolute rock star in his field. This was before telescopes, and he was out there meticulously mapping the stars with just insane accuracy. He even had his own private island observatory funded by the king. But he lived in an era of super strict noble etiquette, and unfortunately for him, his commitment to good manners would tragically outweigh his common sense. And we know exactly what happened thanks to his own apprentice. You might have heard of him, a guy named Johannes Kepler. So in 1601, Tycho is at this big royal banquet in Prague. And during the feast, he realizes he really needs to use the restroom. But he believed that leaving the table before the dinner was over was a huge insult to the host. So what did he do? He just held it.
Now, this decision wasn't just uncomfortable, it was absolutely catastrophic. His bladder just couldn't take the strain. By the time he finally got home, he couldn't, go at all. The pressure led to a massive, severe infection that just completely overwhelmed his system.
He died just 11 days later, all because he thought it would be rude to excuse himself from the dinner table, an absolutely avoidable ending for a true scientific genius.
Okay, for our next tale of woe, let's head to 17th century France, into the super lavish, high-stakes world of royal parties. And here, we meet François Vatel, a man whose name was basically synonymous with perfection. He wasn't a chef, he was the maître d'art, the master organizer of these gigantic events where one tiny slip-up could mean total social ruin. Vatel was the best of the best. His entire job was pure, unfiltered stress, making sure literally thousands of the most powerful people in the world were flawlessly fed and entertained. And in April of 1671, he faced his biggest challenge ever, a 3-day feast for the Sun King himself, Louis XIV. The pressure was just off the charts. He had only 2 weeks to get everything ready, and then double the number of expected guests showed up. The first day had a few little problems, but Vatel pulled it off. But then, on the morning of the second day, disaster struck. Or so he thought. The fish delivery for breakfast was late, and it wasn't the full order. For a total perfectionist like Vatel, this was the ultimate failure. The dishonor was just too much for him to bear. He was convinced he'd ruined the whole event and disgraced his host, so he went to his room and ended his life.
And here's the final, cruelest twist of all. The rest of the fish shipment arrived just minutes after he died. The party, of course, went on without him.
All right, for our final story, we're going to jump forward to the early 20th century. I want you to meet Isadora Duncan. She was a revolutionary American dancer who broke every single rule in the book and completely changed the world of performance forever.
So at the time, dance was all about this really stiff, formal, traditional ballet. Isadora came along and basically just threw all of that out the window. Her style was all about pure emotion, freedom, and natural movement. And she became famous for her long, flowing tunics and scarves. They became a symbol of her artistic rebellion.
Now, Isadora's life was already filled with so much tragedy. She dealt with poverty and, just devastatingly, the loss of her children. But her final moments weren't caused by any of that hardship. No, it was a bizarre freak accident born from the very thing that defined her entire public image, her signature style.
So get this, it's 1927. She's in an open-top car in Nice, France, about to drive off. And of course, she's wearing one of her signature long, beautiful silk scarves. It was flowing out behind her in the wind. But as the car started to accelerate, the end of the scarf got caught in the car's rear axle, and it pulled tight instantly. The ultimate icon of free movement was killed by her own symbol of freedom.
Wow. So let's just run that back one more time, because it's just wild. You've got an emperor who conquered entire kingdoms, but was ultimately defeated by a staircase. A brilliant astronomer who mapped the stars, but died because he was too polite to go to the bathroom. A master planner undone by a fish delivery that was only a few minutes late. And a revolutionary dancer whose greatest symbol of freedom became her undoing.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? I mean, we know history is shaped by these big, powerful forces, but at the end of the day, a single human life can turn on the tiniest, most insignificant moment. A misplaced step, a brief moment of politeness, a single gust of wind. It's a pretty powerful reminder that, in the grand story of it all, sometimes the little details, they're the ones that matter most.